Makes it easier to teach. Everybody likes it. Boy, it's weird being up on a stage. Last time I was on a stage was a middle school Christmas program, and I fell off. And I watched Jay come over here, he's praying, and I watched him teeter, whoop, whoop, whoop. And I watched Scott go jumping up and down. I was like, oh, man, he's going to catch his toe, and down he goes. I'm pretty sure it'll be me. So just a warning, if I go down, I'll get back up. Let's go ahead and open with prayer. Lord, I just thank you for the opportunity to get up here today to share a little bit of what you're saying to me, through me, and hopefully to New Hope, and hopefully out the doors and into the city and into the world. I just ask that you bless this place, Lord, that your spirit continue to dwell here always and forever, Lord. This is your house, and we welcome you here always. We ask that you take control always. Lord, I ask that as I'm standing up here, there become less of me and more of you. That people do not see Nick, but they see you, Lord. We ask that you continue to bless us, continue to speak to us, Lord. And while Scott is gone, I ask that you give him revelation into your word, recall of the word as he's over there teaching the children in the Philippines. Keep him safe, keep him rested, and bring him home safe. Lord Jesus, we just ask you to speak to us today. In Jesus' name, amen. Normally when I teach on Sundays, I like to keep my Friday, from the time I get off work to Friday evening, I keep as my study time. And then I carry it on through Saturday morning. I wake up and I study half the day. And then I usually go through it once or twice in the evening just to refresh myself. Well, this Friday was kind of chaotic, and I got home from work a little late. And then I got to my desk, and my wife calls and says, okay, we got to leave now. Our son Tyler and his beautiful wife are having a baby, and it's happening now. So off to Vancouver we went at about 4:30 Friday afternoon, and I think about 2:30 in the morning we had beautiful little Sylvia born. Sylvie. And so I think we got home about 4:30 in the morning on Saturday, and I slept half the day and got up and spent a few hours in the Word and did as much as I could before my eyes went cross and went to sleep. And we've also had a new puppy for about a month, and he likes to get up 3 or 4 times a night. And so at 2:30 this morning, he decided he'd want to get up and play, not go to the bathroom. He was eating grass and chasing leaves in the yard. So I'm a little tired this morning, so hopefully this will flow as fluently as it does in my head. Last time I spoke, I taught a message, and it was out of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and it was titled The Everlasting Gobstopper. And I spoke really fast, so I'm going to try to slow down today. It's very strange with no clock, so I don't know how long I'm going to keep you, or how little, usually long. But I do have a little digital one on here, so I'll try to keep track of it. But I noticed afterwards, I talked to Pastor Scott, and it's one of the first times he's been around for one of my messages and not been gone. So he came up to me afterwards and says, hey, from what I understood of it, it was really good. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, I've never seen the show. I'm like, how's that possible? It never occurred to my mind that anyone in the church body of Longview, Washington has not seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So I apologize if that was one of you. Hopefully you went and, I don't know how you do it anymore, download it, rent it. We still have the VHS at Mayfield that we watch every year. So, but moving on, Jill and I, a couple weeks ago, turned on the TV and found a show that we'd been wanting to watch since it came out in 2018. And it was titled, Won't You Be My Neighbor? And it's a documentary on Mr. Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers and his neighborhood. And it was quite intriguing, and I really enjoyed it because growing up, I wasn't a fan of Mr. Rogers. However, my wife loved him to death. So I was one of those kids that grew up with the Ninja Turtles, the Transformers, the G.I. Joe. I loved to shoot them up, bang them up fast. And Mr. Rogers' director said, if you take whatever's great about a national television show, and you do the complete opposite, you have Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And I think that's so much of what we need in the world today. Take what's in the media, take what's on social media, take what's in the news, and if we can learn that the complete opposite is probably what we should be doing, that's a good thing. Anyways, the next day I was working, and as usual, the Lord speaks to me through my Sirius radio station on the Christian channel. And that very next day, the Lord was speaking to me through a singer. Most people probably know him if you listen to Christian music, named Danny Gokey. And they called it Danny Gokey Day. And he was hosting the entire show and promoting his new album. And as he was talking about his new album, he talked about one of his songs. And it's probably my favorite on the album. And trying to write down as much as I could without crashing a company vehicle. Sorry, Dave, Kim, you're not here. I was driving down the road trying to write some things down because it really stood out to me. And what he said about this song is, I'll quote it as best as I can. I probably botched it if you double check me online. I got some of it. But he says it's so simple you can sum up pretty much every question, every situation, and every story in the Bible. You can know your purpose, why you were created, what you need to do today, what you need to do tomorrow, and what the Lord needs you to sound like, what he needs you to feel, what the world needs to see by one simple statement. And he says, love God and love people. And that is the title of his song, and I'll read a little bit of the lyrics a little later in the message, where it fits. But the common thread throughout what the Lord's been telling me for the last three weeks to a month, through dearly beloved Mr. Rogers and through Danny Gokey is we really have to love our God with all our heart, and we really have to show who he is to people by the way that we love them. So love God and love people. So Mr. Rogers was a man pretty much that you either loved or you hated. There was no real middle ground with him. And if you watch the show, I had to go back and watch a few episodes because, like I said, I've never watched it, so it's weird that the Lord would speak to me through Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So watching the documentary was really fun. What a wonderful man. Things you didn't really know about him. All kinds of facts, all kinds of history, where the show came from, how it started, stuff about his personal life that you've probably never known. If you haven't watched it, I would recommend it. But his show opens up with a soft piano playing and Mr. Rogers coming through the door. And he comes in with a big smile on his face, wearing his work clothes and his work shoes, and he sings a little song. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Wouldn't you be mine? Couldn't you be mine? I've always wanted a neighbor just like you. And as he's singing this song, he's taking off his work jacket and hanging it in a closet. He sits on a bench as he's talking and singing this song and telling people how much he enjoys them perfectly how they are. And he changes into his comfortable street shoes. And the funny thing is, I was gonna come in early and go hang a hooded sweatshirt and put a pair of shoes down here and change as I was doing this. But like I said, I'd probably fall off the stage. But the reason that he took off his work clothes and his work shoes is because when the show originally aired, is the time slot that it was in is when the male figures, the father figures in the homes were getting off work. It was the time while the wives and the homemakers were preparing dinner. So it was that time in between where the parents were getting situated, and he saw a need for children to be heard, for children to be loved and not be ignored, and even if they were to be set in front of a television, to be loved. He had a real heart for children, and later in his career, he says the love that I have isn't just for children, it's for people. He even at a time postponed his filming of of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and tried to do a film more aimed at it for adults to tell them how loved and how cherished they were. But at the time and even today, people and adults that have lived in the world have become so jaded through their lives, through what's happened to them in the world, with their families and everything. We don't want to hear it. So his idea was to put this sweater, and the funny story is his mom made all of his sweaters. And he wore them all out through the years, and he was trying to make a home-like, comfortable atmosphere. And I really understood this when I was watching it, because one of the things that Jill and I have always tried to do is make people feel welcome in our homes. I remember a time when Sonny and Gabe were young, and they'd always have friends over, and they'd always come out, and we'd talk, and we'd have family dinners, and they'd just be part of everything. And as they got to be teenagers, we carried on to the same thing. And I remember even when we got some of our older kids in our home that we've brought in and loved, we had a house meeting and said, I think it's about time we get a television, because we've never owned a TV and we've never had cable. And we put it to a house vote, and 100% said absolutely not. Because there's a place in our home for every person to sit at the table, every person to sit on the couch, every person to be heard, every person to be loved. Sometimes we argue, as all families do, but it doesn't look perfect. But it's that kind of atmosphere that he was going for. Some of the little facts, and then I'll get into the message about Mr. Rogers, is he was not a Marine. He did not kill people. He wasn't in the military. He didn't have tattoos hiding under his sleeves and his cardigan. But he did study worldwide religions. He studied them all the way from the time he was a teenager until the time that he died. He was an expert in not just Christianity, but worldwide religions. He studied, and he spoke Greek, he spoke Hebrew. He believed in God. He believed Jesus Christ was the Savior. And he was a licensed minister. Even though not many people knew that he was a minister, that he was a pastor, his father in the faith, his pastor, said Mr. Rogers had the ability to speak to people and to love people and to show them who Jesus is without preaching at them or opening a Bible. He says, and it was effective. He was married for 50 years to a woman named Joan Rogers, and they had a son, James. And the part that breaks my heart is throughout his whole career, from the time he started his show until the time he died, he was mocked, he was ridiculed, as most Christians are. Even at his funeral in 2003, it brought tears to my eyes, because there was a group of Christians outside the church holding signs, prodding their children to hold signs, calling him a homosexual and a pedophile. These are Christians. And when I think about it, I was like, man, I'd hate to be standing before God having to answer for ridiculing that man. Because it's very clear in the word in Proverbs 6 the things God despises. And these people holding the signs did 6 out of 7. They were proud. They lied. They were plotting evil. They had feet that raced to do wrong. They were proclaiming false witnesses and sowing discord. And I ask why. Why would people hate a man like this? Because he's different from them. Because he speaks different from them. Maybe they're scared of being loved. Maybe they don't know what love looks like. Maybe they don't know how to receive it. But out of the mouth of this man came songs like this. That he's not just spoke to children, but if you were in a home and you were a parent and you're in cooking or you're reading your newspaper, you can't help but hear it. It's you I like. It's not the things you wear. It's not the way you do your hair. But it's you I like. The way you are right now. The way down deep inside you. Not the things that hide you. Not your toys. not your cars, not your houses, not your money, not your jobs. They're just beside you. But it's you I like. Every part of you, your skin, your eyes, your feelings. Whether old or new, I hope that you'll remember, even when you're feeling blue, that it's you I like. It's you yourself. It's you I like. And it reminded me of a message that Roderick gave years ago. And he was talking about how it's not the church's job to clean people up before they bring them in. He was saying our job is to love them. Our job is to show them Christ and what he looks like. It's God's job to touch their hearts and let God change them, who they are, how they feel, what they look like. Not ours. He said it this way: you can't clean a fish before you get it in the boat. Loving your neighbor is almost a term now we look at these days. It is almost cliche. It's almost a joke, because there was a time in my life that I remember. I can close my eyes and go around my parents' house growing up as a child, and I can tell you every neighbor's name. I could tell you every neighbor's name for 12 houses in either direction or behind us. I won't mention names, but I can remember the man across the street. He was our garbage truck driver. Back then, he had arms like this because you did it by hand and you chucked it. And I remember him coming over for holidays and dinners because he was a single man with no family. I remember the old lady next door who loved to garden and loved her flower beds, and she loved to sing while she did it. And you could peek through the fence and watch, but you never wanted to get caught. I remember every May Day, my mom would force us to sit down at the table and make May Day baskets and go pick flowers and go hang them on her doorknob. I remember the people on the other side of us. I remember him getting his first job interview, moving into the house, and he was so scared, he came over and asked my dad to tie a tie because he didn't know how. I remember the people behind us when their children lost their jobs and the grandchildren came with them. I remember asking my father who these kids were in our playhouse in the back because he gave them permission to be there. I can do this for blocks. I remember the old lady that I spent hours with down the street, that she'd show me her coin collection and show me her pictures from I don't know when, but they were old. Today isn't like that. Today, when we live in our houses, we hide behind curtains and locked doors. We put up tall fences. Most of us probably don't even know our neighbors' names. I think it's an American thing. We get wrapped up in our busy lives to give us excuses not to stop and even say hello. Truth is, most of us think our neighbors are nuisances, pains. I can tell you one neighbor's name from my last house, and we lived there for 15 years. But I can tell you that the lady behind us had the most annoying dogs on the planet and barked for hours, and she thought it was cute. I couldn't believe it when she got a third. I can remember the one next door to her. I can remember trying to enjoy our swimming pool in the backyard, but every summer her kids would come home with their grandkids, and they would yell and scream all day long in the backyard while we were trying to relax and enjoy ourselves. I remember the house, when you're looking at our house on the left, it was a group home for I'll say young adults. We had a autistic, nonverbal child that screamed and yelled from 6 a.m. until 10, 11 p.m. We were at Tom's house one night, and I said, "You hear that?" He's about 3 blocks away from me. Yep, that's our neighbor. The neighbors on the other side, I remember being too scared to go out and put my own trash out on the street or collect my mail because this man could talk to you for an hour and a half. And most of it you'd already heard. And then when he is done, he's like, hey, if you're not too busy, why don't you? I notice you got a whole group of kids over there. I need a bunch of work done on my house and my yard. $300, and a week later, we built a fence. Sometimes it's hard to love our neighbors, but we're still required to do it. I'm going to start out with a story as I get into the meat and potatoes of my teaching. There's a man, I won't give a name, but he didn't live here. He lived somewhere else. And he was a successful man, and he had a nice home, had a beautiful wife. They both had their own cars. They paid their bills, good jobs. And several years into their marriage, he's out doing yard work, and he's pruning trees, and he's got the ladder up in his chainsaw, and he falls off and hurts his back. And come to find out, he's going to have surgery. His job didn't really have medical coverage. So after the surgery, they had a whole pile of medical bills. We're finding it hard to survive. He couldn't go back to work because his back was still hurting. He was still recuperating. The job wouldn't keep his position available for him. So he became jobless. His wife had to take on a second job and start spending less time with the family. Pretty soon they grew apart. Pretty soon she didn't want to do it anymore. And after time, she left. He couldn't afford anything, lost the house. Couldn't find a job. Ended up living in his car. After weeks of doing this, weeks of trying to turn applications and resumes and trying to figure out how to do this new life, he decided he was going to relocate. And so he took what little money he had and he started driving in a direction that he was told was more plentiful with jobs. The wages were higher. The per capita of people working to people not working was better. And he got most of the way to where he was going and ran out of gas and ran out of money, where he had to panhandle and he had to beg for money so he could get to where he was going. He finally ended up with enough money to get in his tank and ended up in a place called Longview, where he still attempted to find work, still continued sleeping in his car. After weeks of staying in Longview, he got a parking ticket because his car hadn't moved, couldn't pay it. Eventually, he was hungry and headed down to the Salvation Army to get a warm meal to eat. While he was there, his car got towed. After that, he had to find a safe place on the street to stay, to sleep. And a lot of us don't know what that's like, and some of us do. Eventually, while he was sleeping, he was beaten up, and his wallet and ID were stolen. And eventually, the police picked him up and threw him in jail for sleeping on the sidewalk. More fines, more fees that you can't pay. As he was released back in the street with no shelter, he spent days and nights walking because you couldn't sit, you couldn't sleep anywhere without getting picked up and getting more fines. And after days of walking, he became delusional with sleep deprivation. And as he was walking, he tripped on the curb and twisted his ankle and hit his head on the ground where he crawled into the nearest doorway and tried to sleep. Let's say this doorway was one doorway away from a church's back door. And on Sunday morning, people had noticed him for 2 to 3 weeks, where he had his blankets in his bag. Garbage started to pile up. And on Sunday morning, on week 3, somebody comes up, somebody pulls in the driveway or pulls in the back parking lot, and they notice him, and it makes them uncomfortable, so they drive around to the front, and they come in the front door. Imagine the next person drives up, and they notice him, and they go over and check him out, see who he is, if they might know him, if he's even alive. After service is over, nobody's checked in with him. Nobody's asked him how he's doing. Nobody even knows his name. And the next day, Monday comes along, and a man from out of town comes because there's all these beautiful shops and all this beautiful decorations they've been working on Commerce. And he comes here to go thrift store shopping. And because he can't find a spot out front, he parks in the back. And as he's in back, he sees this man laying there. And the first thing he does is go in and check up on him, ask him if he's okay. This is a man that's been hurt by the church, a man that may not even believe in God anymore. He asks him if he can call an ambulance. He stays with the man until the paramedics get there. Once the paramedics get him, he asks him if he can follow them to see which room he's going into, if there's anything he can do. When the man's taken care of in the hospital, he comes the next day, brings him some food and a clean pair of clothes. I will tell you, this is a fictional story. But there are so many stories like these that are happening in our community, some that are even way worse. And if you don't believe me, go out there and check. Go out there and talk to some people out on the streets and hear their stories, learn their names. What the Lord had me teaching out today is the parable of the Good Samaritan in Luke 10. And we've all heard it, but maybe not in such a context as I've just spoken it. What I love in Luke 10 is where Jesus starts with this is 25 through 37, and I'll read it. One day, an expert of religious law, basically a lawyer, stood up to test Jesus by asking him this question: "Teacher, what should I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus replied, "What does the law of Moses say? How do you read it?" The man answered, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength, and all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself." "Right," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." The man wanted justification for his actions, so he asked Jesus, "So who is my neighbor?" And I'm not going to read the entire parable of the Good Samaritan because most of us have heard it, and I've just recalled it in an understandable version, I believe. But when we jump down to verse 36, it says, "Now which of these people would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits?" Jesus asked. And the man replied, "The one who showed him mercy." Then Jesus said, "Yes, now go and do the same." And the reason I started all the way up in 10:25 is because the Lord brought it to my attention. He says, "Go ahead." He says, "Go ahead and tell me what the 10 Commandments are. Why don't you give them to me in order?" And I started thinking. And I'm to guess if I looked around and picked 3 people out of the crowd at random and asked you to give me the 10 Commandments in order, I won't, don't worry. Maybe half of us, but that's okay. Because I love the way Jesus works. I love the way that he speaks. Hey, Nick, if you can't remember 10, remember 2. Love God and love your neighbor. The rest of it falls under these two categories. If you do these two things, the rest is easy. You won't even think about it. But so often on so many days, I'm like the lawyer. Maybe I'm having a bad day. And I spend too much time trying to figure out, Lord, who do you need me to love today? Who's my neighbor today? And Jesus turns the question around on me. He'll turn it around on you if you ask the question. And he says, just look at the man who showed mercy. Stop asking, who's my neighbor? And there's a deeper question. And the question is, what kind of person am I? Who am I? And it always, to me, comes back to identity, because that's what the enemy wants to take from us so frequently. It's what he makes us want to feel so guilty about who we are, what we've done, maybe where we're going, what we're going to do. But the way that we think about people, the way that we react to them, the way that we talk to them, shows us a lot about of our own identity. Oftentimes we blame it on them. It's who they are. That's why I acted this way. No, it's what's in my heart that's coming out of my mouth, that's filling up my head. So the Lord asked me 3 questions that I'll answer today, and the first one is, what is a neighbor? And if we look at it in the content of Luke 10, and we go back, and Jesus is talking to basically the lawyer, the leaders of the Jews. In their time and day, they knew they were the elite. They knew they were God's chosen people. They knew that they were set apart. They knew that they had a covenant of circumcision. They were different. And they often had a time to neglect, condemn, and put down people that were non-Israelites, like the Samaritan. They didn't even consider them humans. So when we read verses out of Matthew 5, when Jesus is communicating to the Israelites, to the Jews, and we hear verses like Matthew, the one in Matthew 5, it says, love your enemies. We go, what? What do you mean love our enemies? Yeah, don't just love them. Pray for them. Pray for the people that persecute you. That's a concept that they couldn't fathom. And I'll promise you right now, you really think about it, it'll blow your mind, because it's not something that's easy to do. What do you mean pray and love for somebody that's hurting me? Somebody I despise, somebody I can't stand, somebody I don't want to be in the same room with. Most of us have been there. I know I have. Pray for them. Lord, watch what you're asking for, because I'm going to pray a funny one. No, not really. I had to grow out of that a little bit and grow up. But if you look at Webster's dictionary, you'll find neighbor, and it's a noun, and they give 3 different nouns. It's a person who lives near another, a person or a thing that is near another, or one's fellow human being. If you look at it as an adjective, it's something that is situated or living near another, such as a neighboring nation. As a verb, it says to live or be situated near to, adjoining to, or on the border of a place, or to bring it near. So that was the first question I answered. What is a neighbor? And the second question the Lord gave me is, who is your neighbor? Who are these people that I have to love? And I challenge you right now, look to your right and look to your left. Are these what you consider neighbors? If it was a weekday, we could go right over into the next buildings with people sharing walls. Are these our neighbors? We could go to the buildings across the street, introduce ourselves. Are these our neighbors? We could go to the end of the block, the end of the neighborhood. Are those our neighbors? Since we're here in Longview, We can look at it citywide. Kelso, Castle Rock, Kalama, Woodland. Are these our neighbors? We could think of it countywide. Clark County, Skamania County, Lewis County, Waukegan County, all share our borders. Are they our neighbors? Maybe we're a Washingtonian. Oregon and Idaho. Maybe we're a U.S. citizen. Canada. Mexico. Just kidding. You can look at it continental, worldwide. You can look at it through our entire solar system and galaxy. But the point is, humankind is our neighbor, no matter how you look at it. But we read, so I redefined what a neighbor was in a definition that was more suiting to how I could understand it rather than Webster's. And it's anyone near you that is a human being. Anyone you engage with throughout your day, anyone you look at, anyone you talk to, anybody that is in your vicinity is your neighbor, and God's challenging us to love every one of them. He's not just challenging us, He's telling us, love God and love your neighbor. Third question God asked, this one I didn't like so much. Who wants to be your neighbor? It's like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not a very good neighbor. But we read parables similar to the parable of the Good Samaritan, like Luke 8, which is the parable of the four soils. And we talk about the hard path, the rocky soil, the thorny ground, and the good soil. And as Americans, we're kind of programmed to always think that the world revolves around us. So our automatic response is, well, I'm only picking one and I'm the good soil. But there are days in our lives, even though we are saved, that we're not really producing the crop that we should be. Someday the wind comes along and it uproots me. Sometime the enemy, sometimes the world, sometimes people knock us off our feet. Sometimes I'm the rocky soil. We read verses like those in Luke 18, where the good shepherd, Jesus Christ, leaves the flock of 99 to chase the one. Of course, being the American that the world revolves around with, I'm like, I'm saved, I'm part of the church, I'm a good person, I do nice things. I'm so part of the 99. Am I? How often in my day do I get off the path that God's put me on? How often do I start winding around with not knowing where I'm going and what God's telling me to do? Just to know that God is so good, that Jesus is so good that He searches me out every single day to pick me up and say, nope, you're supposed to be over here. But I feel like the puppy, but I want the leaf. Looks like it might taste good. So in the parable of the Good Samaritan, I challenge you with this. Which character are you? And as an American, I would say, well, I'm the guy in the ditch. I'm the guy everybody's picking on, stealing from, using my time up. I'm feeling ignored. I'm feeling passed by. My feelings are hurt. Nobody acknowledged me, and I feel half dead. So whether or not you're the good soil or any of the other soils, whether you're the lost sheep or the found, even if I'm a terrible neighbor, I didn't want to tell this story, but I'm going to, about a terrible neighbor. I won't name names, but it was me. So while we were at our Cherrywood house, I feel bad about this one, I really do. So we lived next door to this group home for years and years and years. And every day, I'm telling you, this kid would come out and yell and scream. He'd come and jiggle our door handles. He'd run at you and swing at you and chase you back in the house. And we loved on him for a year and realized he was nonverbal, couldn't communicate back. Our oldest daughter would call us from her car and says, he's got me trapped in the car again. He won't let me out, you know. And we knew his name. We tried to talk to him. We tried to love on him. And about a year of him being there, I was out mowing the lawn, and my wife's already blushing. And I didn't know he was outside, and then our lawns, there's no fence in between them, and I was just turning the mower, and my back came to him, and he was about this close behind my back and stomped really loud and screamed, and I might have peed a little. And I turned around, I'm like, Owen, go back in the house. And he's like, screamed at me. And so he finally went back in the house, and 20, 30 minutes later, I'd finished the front, the backyard, and I started with the weed eater, and I was edging our front walkway. And I got this thing on, I got earmuffs on and goggles, and I'm doing this, and I look up just in time to see this kid coming, running at me, flailing, and my fight or flight response kicked in like that. And I gunned that weed eater full blast, raised it up, and his eyes got about this big, and before I knew it, I was like, uh-oh. And he runs off, locks himself in the house. Well, the next day I was coming home, and I pulled my truck in the driveway, and he's right there by our sidewalk waiting to greet me. And I get out of the truck, and he backs up a little bit, and it's the first thing I've ever heard him say in a year. And he calls me the mean guy in the truck. Not a title you want. Really doesn't edify the Lord. So, there's many people in these stories. And I ask you which one you are today. Are you the victim that's laying in the ditch? Are you the thief that's taking things that aren't yours and attacking and not loving, not giving? Are you the priest that's ignoring and walking past, uncaring, unloving, jaded by the world? Perhaps you're the assistant that's curious enough to come up and look, but not really react. Not really talk to anyone. I've seen this posted, and I've seen it spoken out of many mouths, Christians, non-Christians alike. Maybe the guy in the ditch deserved it. Probably served him right. Things like you have nobody to blame but yourself. Words like maybe they should pull themselves out of the gutter. I've even heard them called lazy bums, been told to get jobs. Tell you what, some days people are hard. 1 Peter 4:4-8 says this. Of course, your former friends are surprised when you no longer plunge into the flood of the wild and the destructive things they do. So they slander you. But remember that they will have to face God who stands ready to judge everyone. But both the living and the dead. That is why the good news was preached to those who are now dead. So although they are destined to die just like all people, they now live forever with God in the Spirit. The end is coming soon. This is what I want to focus on. Therefore, be earnest and disciplined in your prayers. Just as important, just most important of all, continue to show deep love for each other. For love covers a multitude of sins. This isn't just talking about saints, it's also talking about pre-saints, the old friends that mock you, the people that aren't nice to you. He's saying love them. Pray for them. Because love will cover a multitude of sins. That's why it's so important. That's why Jesus himself said these are the two most important. Love your God and love people. Which brings me back to Danny Agoki's song. And I'm going to share. I took some of the lyrics out that were repetitive but most of it's there, just to save a little time, which I'm not doing. And this song says this: I've been running in circles, jumping the hurdles, getting caught in the rush of doing so much. I'm feeling kind of worn out. All this checking the boxes, trying to be flawless, has me spinning my head, catching my breath, too afraid to slow down. I tell myself to keep this up, that God wants more than just my love. But I've been complicating things. It's just like me to overthink. And these are the lyrics that really stab me right here. I just got to keep it real simple. I've got to bring it back to ground zero, because it all comes down to this: love God and love people. We're living in a world that keeps breaking, but if we want to find a way to change it, it all comes down to this: love God and love people. Oh, this freedom, the keys to the kingdom, knowing life will be found when love can be loud, because love is what it's all about. I tell myself to keep this up, that all God wants is just my love. No more complicating things, no more needing to overthink. Love is patient, love is kind, rescues hearts and changes lives. Love is all we need to make things right. Got to keep it real simple. Keep on loving, keep on loving. Love God and love people. It's all about love. And it's true. If we love God with all our heart, all our soul, all our mind, that's what changes us. That's what changes our heart. That's what changes the way we think. Having a relationship with Jesus Christ, allowing the Spirit to move in us, around us, understanding that He's in control and we are not, and allowing Him to have it. That's how we grow. That's how we recognize that every single human being that crosses our paths, whether they're different from us, whether we like them or not, whether they're saved or unsaved, everyone is a part of God's creation. God desires that all people would be saved. 1 Timothy. He sees every single person, man, woman, and child, as a potential child of His. And we know, when we know God's heart, when we have a relationship with Him, when we're in the Word, which tells us who He is, tells us about His character, we need to understand. We need to love others enough that we desire the salvation that we have, that they would be rewarded with the eternal life in heaven with their Creator. We need to know them enough to love them when they're unlovable, to show them what Jesus really looked like, what He felt like, what He sounded like. Truth is, loving your neighbor isn't that hard. Some days it may seem like it, but it's simple. Can we respect others, how they live, their opinions, without interjecting, without our own? Does our opinion have to be better than theirs? Do we regard their needs, their hopes, their dreams? Do we hold them as highly regarded as our own? Because when we put people beneath us, I'm telling you, we don't. We look at them differently. We need to realize that every day throughout our week, we're going to have these Good Samaritan opportunities. We're going to have people's lives that we can touch, people's lives we can speak into, names that we can remember, conversations that would normally be had. We need to take advantage of these situations, which we don't often do. And I'll use myself as an example. There's been many times I know somebody's hurting. Many times I've talked to them. Many times I've avoided them in the supermarket because I really just needed the dog food and I don't have the time. So who is my neighbor? It's who you're looking at. It's whoever we meet. 1 John 3:17 says this, if anyone has the world's goods and sees that his brother is in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? We all have things that we can offer, even if it doesn't seem like it, even if it's uncomfortable. We have our time. It's free. Sometimes it's all people need. They need somebody to sit down and listen. Sometimes they're not even looking for a solution. Sometimes just remembering a name will bring tears to someone's eyes. Remembering their children's names, remembering things they like. We all have talents we can use, hobbies we enjoy. If there's somebody that wants to fish, I have all the equipment. I love fishing. Why wouldn't I take them? Which comes back to time. And we all have our treasures, the things that we hold valuable. I'm not saying you got to go hand $20 to the first person you see. It's not always about money. Sometimes the treasure is your time. And I'm going to end with this. And right now, in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, I would be, Scott would say, Miles, come play. And I will say this would be the time when I would take off my cardigan and head towards the closet and get back into my work jacket and my shoes because it's the end of the show. And he comes on with another song. It's such a good feeling to know you're alive. Such a happy feeling you're growing inside. What's a whistle? When you can wake up ready to say, I think this will make a snappy new day. You always make today such a special day. You know how? By just being you. Only one person in the whole world is like you. That's yourself. I'll be back next time. Bye-bye. But we have to come to a place in our lives that God wants all of our attention, all of our devotion. He really does desire a relationship with us. He wants us to love him wholeheartedly. And just as much as he wants us to love him, he wants us to love each other. And so on those hard days and on those good days, I just encourage you. It's easier than it seems to put on a smile, to ask somebody how their day is going and mean it. And I know there's probably people in here that are having a bad day, people that this might have touched. And there are people here, good people. All you have to do is tell them, ask them, be real with them, communicate with them. And there are people here more than willing to spend time with you. And as you go outside of the church body and you head outside and you get to the whatever restaurant you're eating at, remember that server that might dump water in your lap is one of God's children. It's okay. Life goes on. Your pants will dry. I'm going to go ahead and close in prayer if we all just bow your heads. Lord, I just thank you. I thank you for your unfailing love. I thank you that you loved us first so that we could love each other. I ask that you continue to show each and every individual how much you love them throughout their day, throughout their week, throughout their life. Continue to show your face to them. Continue to reveal who you are, what you're doing, how you're moving, what direction you're going, and place them directly in the path that you need them to be. I ask that we open our eyes as we leave here today and understand who our neighbors are and the people's lives we can touch. I ask you to fill us with so much love as we leave here today that we can't help but spew it out of our pores. That people can see who you are, what you stand for, and how you love through each and every individual here today. And I ask that you give us those opportunities, and I ask that we recognize them. Give us the ability to love people the way you love them. Give us the ability to use our eyes to see people how you see them, Lord. Lord, I just ask you bless each and every person as we leave here today. We thank you and we love you in Jesus' name. Amen. Absolutely.